Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Azren here, owner of the Calgary Language Nerds, and welcome to today's YouTube video and of course podcast episode. Today I want to talk about some common reasons as to why many language learners feel like they're not progressing. They feel stuck. They feel like they're putting this time in to learn a language and they're not progressing at all, or they're progressing incredibly slowly. They're not seeing their progress. Now, the first reason this happens is that you are progressing, but you just don't notice it. That's probably the most common one. I don't 100% know why this happens, but a lot of language learners, even though they're progressing on a day-by-day, week-by-week basis, you don't notice your progress. You don't feel like, wow, I've gotten a lot better. Instead, what tends to happen is you feel your progress in bursts, in sudden moments. You're like, oh my God, I've gotten way better. It's like 8 months later, you have one experience, and that one experience shows you just how much you've improved. I'll give you this one example. I have a student that I've taught for a number of years, and she had this maybe like 6 months ago. She sent me this very excited text message, and then she told me more in class. She basically said, oh my God, Azren, I was in an Uber, and the Uber driver was a native French speaker, and he started to talk to me, and I told him I was learning French, and we started to talk, and I was actually able to talk to him. I understood what he said. I could talk to him. It was amazing. I couldn't have done that before. Wow. I've really gotten a lot better. So one moment and you see all the progress you've made. But on a week-by-week, month-by-month basis, you often just don't see it for one reason or another. So the most common reason you might feel like you're not progressing is that for some reason, there's something about language learning that you don't tend to see it's very common not to see your progress or notice your progress on a short-term basis. You tend to see it in a longer-term window. Not 100% sure why. I could speculate, but we'll leave that aside for another day. The second reason this might be happening is that you're just not spending enough time on learning a language. That's quite possible. I've made a video blog and a podcast episode, all three. I made a video blog and podcast episode talking about how long it tends to take to progress to different levels of proficiency. I'll put a link in the description box of this video or podcast episode in case you want to go and check it out. But I talked about how long it tends to take in terms of hours to reach different levels of proficiency. And so what might be happening is that you're just spending so little time on a day-by-day, week-by-week, month-by-month basis that of course your progress is slow. You're just not spending very much time on it. That is quite possible. Also, a bonus thing you might want to know is that the more intensive your studies, the faster you progress. In other words, I've said this many times, but if you were to study or practice, if you were to spend 100 hours, let's say, in 3 months on trying to learn Spanish, for instance, or if you spent 100 hours in 1 month, you will probably progress more in 1 month than you would in 3 months. Now, 100 hours in a month is actually a lot. That's a lot of time. Even in 3 months, that's quite a bit of time, to be honest. But the concept applies no matter how much time it is. If you did 4 hours of study across 2 days or 4 hours of study across 2 weeks, you would probably learn more in 2 days than you would in 2 weeks. Probably. Generally speaking, the more intensive your studies, the faster you tend to learn. Again, in the video blog and podcast episode I'll link below about the amount of time it takes to reach different levels of proficiency. I've given a couple of extra readings in that piece of content, some extra sources. Like there's a Cambridge article I really like. There's a number of different external resources I've referred to that I've used to try and figure out how long it takes to reach different levels of proficiency. One of them, it's a Cambridge article, actually talks about the fact that intensity of studies leads to faster progress. The more intense your studies, you do generally learn faster. So if you want to read more about that, there is a link. There's a link in the episode that I'm linking in this episode, if that makes sense. There's a link there and you can go check it out and read more about that. Okay? Another reason as to why you might feel like your progress is quite slow is that you are at an intermediate or advanced level. The higher your level is, the slower your progress tends to feel. The lower your level is, the faster your progress tends to feel. And the reason is quite simple. When you're at a lower level, a beginner level, you can learn 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 things. You can learn a couple of concepts, And with a couple of simple concepts, you can 10x your learning. You can 10x your communicative ability. I'll give you an example. Let's say you knew how to say 50 different household objects. You can say plant, you can say door, you can say floor, whatever, wall. You can say 50 household objects, okay? And then I teach you one color. Or no, let's just say I teach you 5 different colors, green, red, blue, etc. Now, all of a sudden, you can say, actually, even one color. I teach you how to say white, okay? Now, all of a sudden, you can take your 50 household objects and say 50 different things by adding one color. White door, white floor, white this. You can say, you can actually increase with one word, you can pair it with the 50 words you knew before and say, even like with 51 words, you can now say 100 things. But before that one adjective, you can only say 50 things. Does that make sense? So in the early phases, you can learn one thing that 10x's your learning, or 50x's your learning, or 2x's your learning, right? Whereas in the intermediate phases and the advanced phases, you don't have as many concepts like that. It's not like you can learn one word or one grammar point or one of something, and all of a sudden you can 2x your communicative ability. Doesn't really happen as much in the intermediate and advanced levels. And so in those phases, the progress might just feel slower because you're not getting those quick gains. And that's why it's so important to focus on the process, focus on putting in the time, focus on putting one foot in front of the other, especially at those intermediate and advanced phases. It's also why, bonus tip, you have to enjoy the process, especially at the intermediate. Wow, that got really bright. There's a window in front of me. Anyway, you have to focus on enjoying the process at that intermediate and advanced level, because it's all about it really is in many ways all about the process when you're at those two levels. You have to just keep putting the time in, and if you're not enjoying the process, you're going to quit at some point. And again, this is only if you're trying to reach a very advanced level, right? Not everyone is. The last thing I'll mention here, and this is something I'm speculating on, and if you have any thoughts on it, I'd love to hear what you think, but I think one reason as to why people feel like their progress is slow is because they spread their attention out. They spread their study time, their language learning time across multiple different skills. In other words, they spend 5 hours a week. Let's say they're spending 4 hours a week, okay? 4 hours a week on learning a language. They're doing 1 hour a week on listening, 1 hour a week on grammar, 1 hour a week on some app, and 1 hour a week on some miscellaneous time where it's maybe different every week. So they're spending their 4 hours, for example, on 4 different things. And so what happens is that they feel like their progress is slow because what they're actually doing is they're progressing a little bit in reading every week, a little bit in writing every week, a little bit in speaking every week, a little bit in listening every week. And it's these 2% incremental improvements in 4 different categories every single week or every single month. And I have a theory that, and I could be wrong about this, but this is a theory I have, that one option for language learners is to spend all their time on one skill so they can see faster improvements in that one skill. Spend all your time on just listening so you can boost up your listening skill really quickly. Spend all your time on reading so you can boost your reading skill quickly. Spend all your time on this one grammar point just so you can get that grammar point in your head and you have a decent understanding of it. Spend all your time on speaking for a short period of time so you can feel like your speaking skill is getting better. Spend all your time on one thing and then switch all your attention to another thing, then to another thing. A quick little story. I'm actually building right now a course at the Calgary Language Nerds for Spanish, although I will make one for French too, where I want to be able to teach people to hold a 15-minute conversation within 6 months by spending 4 hours a week on learning Spanish. 4 hours a week for 6 months and hold a 15-minute conversation. Most people, that's not the kind of results that they have. If you were to walk into learning Spanish, spend 4 hours a week for 6 months, most people, there are exceptions, but most people are not able to reach a conversational level where they can have basic conversations for 15 minutes or so in a 6-month window. Those are not common results in my experience. And the methodology I want to try to use in the course, I'm going to test it. The methodology I want to test out is we spend all of our attention in the course, essentially, on conversation. The grammar is not going to be a big focus. Reading is not going to be a big focus. Writing is not a big focus. Pronunciation, not a big focus. all we're trying to focus on, all of our attention, 90% of the attention, let's say, is on helping you converse about 8 different conversation topics that people talk about on a day-by-day basis. Work, your family, your education, what you did last weekend or in the recent past, what's coming up in the recent future. These very day-to-day typical topics that people talk about all the time that are relatively straightforward topics. And my theory is that if you spend all your attention on that, you can get people to feel like, wow, they made a lot of progress in a relatively short period of time. And then once you're at that basic conversational level, you can switch your focus to something else. You can say, okay, look, we did 6 months on this. Let's go spend 6 months or 3 months or 1 month, whatever, a focused short period of time on one new skill. Okay, now let's focus on cleaning up that past tense. Great, 3 months on that. Wow, look at how much your past tense has improved. Oh my God. Okay, 3 months now on your pronunciation. Let's really focus on pronunciation. Boom. Wow, look how much you improved in just 3 months. So I think, this is a theory, I could be completely wrong, but this is the theory I have where possibly a way to approach learning a language is to focus all your time or most of your time on one skill at a time so you can see that progress and get motivated by how much you progressed in that one skill. In fact, if you're curious and you do want to be part of my test group of people in this conversational 6-month Spanish program, if you're curious and you want to be part of the test group, just send me an email. Go to azrenthelanguagenerd.com/contact, and I'm happy to give you some more information. It's in its early testing phases, so what'll probably happen is I'll let you take a lot of the classes for free or heavily discounted, because I'm trying to work out the curriculum and even see if it's a good idea. So just feel free to email me, azrenthelanguagenerd.com/contact, AZ or Z, REN, thelanguagenerd.com/contact. And we can talk more about that Spanish program. Okay? You can also just contact me on social media if you prefer, at Polyglot Azren, POLYGLOT AZ or Z REN. Find me on Instagram, Facebook, whatever you want. Send me a message and we can also talk more that way too. Okay? So those are some reasons as to why people feel like they're not progressing in another language. If you have any questions, again, you're welcome to contact me, leave a comment, message me. Happy to chat more. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk later. Bye-bye. See you.